Assalamu alaikum everyone. I hope you are all well. Well, today I'm here with another speaker. Her name is Ayesha Rafi. She's an architect, an urbanist, and an activist. She's an active member of Peacemakers Pakistani. She writes there. She's the author at our website. And while completing her thesis, her master's degree from UET, she's also teaching at the University of South Asia, and she's an amazing person. She's an amazing researcher, and I'm very glad to have her on our show today. And she's going to share the city of Lahore, the entity of Lahore, from the lens of food. She's a food lover, and I'm just looking forward to what she's going to talk about the food and her love for food and how she sees her city from the lens of food. So just let's welcome her to the show and enjoy the episode. So, how are you? Thank you for your time and energy for sharing whatever you are going to share today. How are you?
Hello, Isma. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
It's
Uh,
so good to be here, actually, to tell the people about food and the relationship of urban design. It's kind of my passion, and I love to talk about it. And
Thank you so
it's
much.
it's a pleasure for me to come here and talk about it.
Yeah, I remember the time we were discussing food and the importance of food in terms of urban environment and how you see it in the city, Lahore. I was very looking forward to it for listening from you that how you see it from your perspective and just sharing it with people because it's something that is very special to us Lahoris and knowing it as understanding through the point of an architect and an urban designer, it's amazing. So let's get into it. Looking Share
Okay,
whatever you want to share.
let's dig in. So, should I share my screen?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, wait for a second, please. So, can you see my screen as well?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
It's clear to
Okay.
you?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just dig in. Should I start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So today's topic, which we are going to discuss, is Lahore through the lens of food. So Lahore is one of the major city of Pakistan. As most of the people know here, it's one of the biggest city of Pakistan, a metropolitan city basically. So how food is impacting the development of Lahore, and as we see, as an urban designers, we have a lot of parameters when we talk about the urban design or the urban infrastructure of a city. Like we talk about the walkability, the walkable distances, the walkable spaces, the pedestrian friendly cities, or the cities with high density, and many other parameters. So mostly I think food is one factor that is overlooked, not in a lot of urban design areas, but specifically in Lahore, we do not consider food is one of the major parameter while we are considering about the urban morphology of Lahore, because Lahore being is a cultural city and is in a heritage city and a city who have a love of food in the core of its heart. It's very important that we consider food as one of the major dimension when we are planning urban areas or urban design of the city. So I think first we should talk about the relationship of food and city, how food and city is related to each other. As my screen is still visible to you.
Yes, I can see it, but just share it in the full screen mode. That's better.
I think for now, if it's in that way, it's fine.
Okay,
I'll
yeah.
convert
Sure.
it into the full screen after some time. Okay, ठीक है. अच्छा, so when we talk about food, the food has an intricate and multifaceted connection with the urban morphology of Lahore. Specifically, from when we start talking about the beginning of the time, like the tradition of sitting down and eating in public spaces has been existing from centuries. From the old age street side informal eateries to the inns in the silk routes of Asia, around the 18th century, we have fancy restaurants with elaborate interiors and high-end culinary arrangements with a surfaced in the French culture. These restaurants basically gave birth to the dine out culture at events or special occasions where people had gathered in the public spaces to eat and celebrate. This culture of eating out is basically encouraging the sociability and interaction among people, which enhances the urban vibrancy and conviviality to the urban spaces. Specifically, when we talk about Lahore, with the passage of time, the inclination towards dining out intensified in Lahore, also becoming a tool for urban regeneration. How we talk about is food is one of the driving forces in the development of the urban settlement in Lahore. You know that in most of people who lives in Lahore and who have you know love for Lahore know that there are a lot of streets, a complete whole street in the city is dedicated to the food spaces by making it one of the necessary parameter of urban morphology. So the need for food street and food spaces increased to the extent where residential streets are started converted into the food streets. So basically, um, give me a 1 second, please. The public culture of food brings vitality and conviviality to the urban life. So different individuals or group of people came together in public, in a public space under the umbrella of food, like to buy food or to eat in a public or to grow food together as an urban farming. Resultantly, this venture unites the people, offered them a special space called as a third space, which we often use a term in architecture or in an urban that is neither a home nor a workspace. So within the fast pace of life, anonymity in large scale spaces of modern city, like food menus, gives us a sense of intimacy, a place to pause at an entirely human scale. So, food in the city enriches our everyday sensations of sound, sight, smell through how it is produced, displayed, and consumed. I will tell you about that later in our in my slide. So, with the passage of time, as I talking about the inclination towards dining out intensified, becoming a tool for urban generation. So, the whole city, the whole streets are dedicated to the food. So, Lahore's urban frame is full of many food hubs or food streets that are evolved over different time periods. So, moving further, why we have so much diversity of food and why we have so much love for food in Lahore, basically. So it's because of Lahore has many colors, and Lahore have a very multicultural communities living together here. Cuisine or food is the major part of the culture, and Lahore have layers of culture coming together from the different areas, and amalgamation of these cuisines are give birth to the different eating out spaces. So the love of food seems have a special place for the people of Lahore, and it's not a new thing. It's basically it came here in the subcontinent before even the Western influence, or as we call it, the colonialism. The Mughal have a very special cuisines, and they have a deep love of food, and their representation of food is embedded still in our roots. And now, which the spaces we have for food have that tradition, have that aura of representing a food. So, love for food leads us to have entire streets dedicated to a local favorite. So, Lahore also have certain streets like Anarkali Food Street, Ghundmundi Food Street, and Lahore Fort Food Street. Once it is said that Lahore has its feet in history and its heart and soul in food. So, because Lahore is a space, a place where a lot of people eat together, enjoy the intimacy and the urban design of, enjoying the urban public life while having their food in the public, interacting with with their friends or with the strangers. So when so it's just a basic history about how food is important to Lahore. So I'll give you a certain example of an anarkali street, how taste, smell, and sound on the street in Lahore sounds like. So basically, when we step out in an anarkali street, there's a lot of people there, a lot of because it's a very high dense area, a crowd where a lot of throngs of people, tourists, street hawkers, customers, all are trying to negotiate the sidewalk. they are claiming that sidewalk, they are claiming that public space, and walking among them, you just have the deep aroma of the smell of the food of kebab. Then there is a restaurant on the side of the street whose door is open, and you can, you can see or you can hear the sound of the food making as a takatak, or the sound and the smell of pouring vinegar on the barbecue. So, urban design is not only about your sense of sight. It's about your sense of sight and your sense of smell, your sense of taste. So the whole combination, how food is impacting the urban street, it's not just what you see, it's what you feel in your bones, the smell and the sound of it. So when along with that, there are certain cart of vegetables, of fruit, yellow mangoes and bananas and dark green vegetables neatly arranged under an umbrella. So these things are contributing to the conviviality of an urban space. So your senses are constantly being filled with the information on food, telling you that you are in the heart of the Lahore in an Anarkali food street, which have a lot of food to offer you and a lot of diversity of the people which are sitting there eating their food, interacting with each other in the culturally rich settings of an Anarkali, where you have centuries old buildings to enhance your experience. So it's just a little example.
Wait,
Yes.
wait. Okay, so I wanted to ask in the previous slide that is it something you have written down yourself?
Yes, I have
Okay.
written it myself. And, it's basically, I was born in Lahore, I raised in Lahore, and during my studies, I practically lived near Anarkali for the 5 years. And, the day and the night was there, and we can see all these food areas. So, I have a very deep observation
Uh,
for these things. And specifically when architecture, nourished my skills, how the food is impacting, the urban design and the people sitting there, how it's impacting their senses.
okay, so I would like you to read these lines in a storytelling way because I have read these lines and I'm just amazed by how you are storytelling about the food experience because I knowing you personally that you are a food lover. So
Yes, true.
while I was reading this, it was something like I want to hear it in a storytelling way. So just read it out like you are telling a story
Okay,
of
so
how
I
you
think
feel immersed in that.
when I'll read this out, a lot of people from Lahore can relate to it, because uh,
Definitely, all food
I
lovers
think
can relate to it.
yes, I think the food lovers can relate to it basically. And
Yeah,
now I think the person who is not who do not have any relationship to the architecture field, I think they can also understand that how the food is impacting their senses. So
definitely.
one day when I am stepping out on the street of Anarkali, I have to adjust my eyes not on the bright daylight because of the our temperature, but also to a very crowded scene. Throngs of people, tourists, street hawkers, customers, and traffic police, all are trying to negotiate the sidewalk space, resulting in a rather slow pace. Walking among them, I'm stopped short by a deep aroma, the smell of kebabs. Simply awesome. A restaurant on the side has its door open. Along with that, I hear the sound of a takatak behind a small push cart at the edge of the sidewalk, efficiently preparing food while calling out for people. On sniffing the air, I think I skipped a line. Can I go back?
Sure. It's your
So go back to that area of walking among them. I'm stopped short by the deep aroma, the smell of kebab. A restaurant on the side has its door open. Along with that, I hear the sound of takatak, and then I feel the aroma of pouring vinegar on barbecue. A few steps further on, another strong smell is in the air, shawarma and the fries. A vendor stands behind a small pushcart at the edge of the sidewalk, efficiently preparing food while calling out for the people. On sniffing the air, people line up to buy the freshly prepared, delectable fast food. Next, my eyes catch the sight of a bright colors of a fruit and vegetable stall, yellow mangoes and bananas, red lychees and the dark green vegetables, all arranged neatly under a large multicolored umbrella. My senses keep being filled with more information on food, telling me that unmistakably I am in Anarkali, Lahore.
Thank you so much. I'm hungry now. It was
In the
fun.
this is basically the entrepreneurship skills of opening a food business, that you should have your customers make hungry for it by the sight and by the smell of food, and it's a very
Yeah.
common psychology for
Yeah,
the food businesses.
I remember a time in
And
Anarkali as well. Amazing. Okay, so can I move on further?
so before trying to classify that how we can see food with the help of how we can see Lahore food, I would just like to give you a brief history of the timeline of restaurants in Lahore. So, the development of food dedicated areas in the urban fabric of Lahore is according to basically the dining out patrons of Lahoriites. Like how the people in Lahore dine out dictated the pattern of restaurants that were opened during the different time periods of after post partition, basically. So I'll talk about the history of Pakistan after the partition. So after the partition, there is when we have in the early independence days, it was more common for single males to eat out, and the traditional dhabas would only cater mostly to the male bachelors. It was very rare for the female to dine out independently. But in the late 70s, many new restaurants offering desi food, Chinese cuisine, and the fast food opened up. So the families started dining out in these restaurants on the special occasions, on some birthday or on any, if there is a family celebration or any special occasion. People still there's a trend. There was not a trend of individual females to go out and dine in public. It was a trend of families dining out in the public. So then we have these. At that time, we have Gawal Mandi and Lakshmi Chowk. Then they first in 1990s, the first fast food chain was opened up in the Lahore. McDonald's first, I think the McDonald's came into Lahore, and then there are a series of international fast food chain like KFC, Hardy that started opening up in the Lahore, and that changed the basically dining out patterns. After that, in 2000s, we have the Kazafi Stadium area, where we have very cultural and traditional dining out areas like Dera and but with a very traditional cuisine. Then after that, we have Lahore food streets, specifically food dedicated food streets coming into the history of Lahore. People going out more oftenly, especially females are going out independently, not just with their families. Families are dining out, and the male or female, basically the young workers, basically the people who are working are meeting their friends or colleagues after the office or having their lunch breaks in these restaurants. So recently, after 2010 or 2015, in the last 5 year or 10 years, we have a lot of fancy restaurants opening up in Lahore. Especially, I think about the Mall One area or the Alam area. We have a lot of high end and fancy restaurants in that area. So Pakistan then caught up with the cafe culture. First was, I think, Masoom's Cafe, which came in Lahore in 1998, I think so. So these cafe culture obviously comes here from the Western society. The culture of sitting in a restaurant or reading a book or working online or anything, some sort of. So, but today now a lot of people go out, not with just their families, but with their friends, but with their colleagues, and it's not limited to a weekend dine out. On an average weekday, the restaurants are filled up with the people after 6, and mostly after 6, because people after after their work are going there, and in their lunch breaks. So initially, we only have Pak Tea House, but after the independence, we have Gawal Mandi and Lakshmi Chowk, then the fast food chains, then there are Kazafi restaurants, basically the Desi, the startups that were owned by the people of Lahore. Then there is a specifically food streets, and then there is now Gulberg, which have a very high-end restaurants coming from the international fast food or international restaurant chains. So now I would like to categorize the food in three medium, the experience of food, the experience of Lahore with the lens of food, into three major categories. Like we have three major categories in beef steak, like raw beef steak, medium beef steak, and well done beef steak. So I'd like to categorize the spaces of food in Lahore on the basis of these typological reading, like raw, medium, and well done. So there's an example of raw found in the buzzing streets of Anarkali, Liberty, Itra, Fortress, and many more streets. Like we have these raw restaurants. Like we don't have very fancy sitting plans there. We have open food carts where people stand there, and a year-old, centuries-old building where we have these experience, heritage experience. So we considered, basically, I'm categorizing them to a raw food as an example of raw food spaces. Then there is a medium found, like just a medium steak. We can call it a medium food spaces where they have a fine dining restaurants and cafes. Then, as a moving further, there's an example of well done, like a well done beef steak. We can consider it a fancy high-end restaurants in Gulberg and DHA and hotels. We have these restaurants which are very they're sitting plan with a very fancy interiors and a very fancy culinary. Uh, we have these restaurants. So these are three major categories, and I'll discuss few of these areas in the further in our presentation. So as well, are you interested, or I mean, do you have do are you developing an interest?
Yes, definitely, because I'm able to relate to it, how we have worked on the restaurants during our education time in our architecture projects, and how we used to consider the architecture and ambience of any restaurant or any design, considering the food that that the restaurant is going to serve. It plays a very amazing role, that how we relate the ambience, how we create the ambience, considering the food that is going to be served in that particular
In
place
that
and
particular
yeah.
space. So
So
I'm going basing on that ambience. Basically, I'm differentiating the three categories of food spaces in Lahore, so we can have a complete look on it, a wholesome look on it. So
definitely.
first there is the street food, which we considered as a raw experience. As a raw experience, we have a lot of vibrancy there. Street design, we have hawkers, live public spaces. Live public spaces is the spaces where you have multi-sensory experience, where you can see the food cooking in front of yourself, and the vibrant colors of the food cooking and the sound of the food cooking. And along with that, you have a multi-color colors in the food carts, and the people moving here and there, in the the vibrancy of that public space. We have that vibrancy of public space in our street food, which we considered as a raw example of food. So on the left side, on the top left side, there's a picture of Qaddafi Stadium in Lahore. We have that a restaurant there named as a Dera. So Dera is a very traditional restaurant with a very traditional sitting plan, and a very traditional sitting traditional furniture. So there's a next picture. Was a picture of the main market in Gulberg. So when we talk about the main market, what comes for the people of Lahore, when we talk about the main market of Gulberg, what comes in their mind is the Alamgir ice cream, which is the most famous ice cream of that main market. So we associated that areas with the years old food spaces. So in the next we have in the next picture, which is on the right top right corner of the slide, is the Liberty. Liberty is one of the initially developed as an elite shopping area for Gulberg, for the Gulberg area in, I think, 1970s. So we have a lot of food, street food in the market while you shop and you sit there and you eat their food. Liberty is also known for it. Then on the bottom left corner, there is a picture of Hafiz Food Corner, which is on the Mall Road, a very historical road of the Lahore. So there is, it's adjacent to the what we call it, museum. So we have this memory of that space. We have the memory of museum, that there is a Hafiz food corner along with that. So this is how Lahoris, have a memory of a space with the help of a food in it. Because everywhere you go, you can find a food, either a street food or a very fancy high-end food, contributing to the urban design of the Lahore. So further, while moving to the Gawal Mandi food street, Gawal Mandi has have basically a very interesting history. After after partition, Gawal Mandi was the first properly developed area outside of the walled city in Lahore. Walled city at that time was the only developed area, and then Gawal Mandi was developed outside of that walled city, and it was considered as a Gulberg of its time. Gulberg, which we now consider as an elite area or a commercial area of today's Lahore. So it was a kind of residential community which was considered as an elite area, or the people. Basically, Gawal Mandi is the area in which the families, the migrated families, basically came here and settled in Gawal Mandi. So the families who migrated to Lahore from Amritsar and other nearby cities settled there. Among them were the craftsmen and even some businessmen. So at that time, after the partition, where there is a lack of employment opportunities for the newly arrived families, so they have to meet their daily, day-to-day expenses. So what they did is that the newly arrived families started there or started opening up their small shops in front of their houses. So the skillful craftsmen made a living through their trade, while some of the individuals put up food stalls along the street. So the food stalls gradually mushroomed until each corner of the Gawal Mandi street was offering something unique. For instance, the Sikh from Amritsar who settled in Gawal Mandi introduced gram flour coated fried fish. This was the famous Sardar fish that is very famous and dear to the Lahoriites. So the recipe has almost become now an identity of Lahore. Similarly, barbecue techniques and various types of faluda were introduced by the families whose ancestors were Pehlavans. The Kashmiri brought with them harissa. The rich doodh jalebi concoction was also found fame in Gawal Mandi, and the diverse population each brought something unique. So you can see here, Asba, is what the people coming from different background, different cultures are settling in the Gawal Mandi, and they are they are meeting their ends by using their craftsmanship. So gradually, there come a time when Gawal Mandi became associated with a great food, even though there were other business operating there. But it was the food here that stood it apart from the rest of the city. So, moving on, when it was in 2000, when it was first suggested by by the local government that it should be converted into a proper food street, which would then become an identity, identity for Pakistan. So the authorities were started convincing the community about the initiative. The people living here were hesitant. Obviously, they were skeptical about. They did not understand the concept of making it as a food street, because it's the first example in Lahore in which the whole street is was going to convert into a food street. The whole street is going to did have a specific dedication towards the food street, towards the food. So basically, but gradually all were in agreement, and the historical structure around the street was preserved while the residential buildings were bought by the government from their owners. The photo studios, and there were the photo studios and other shops which were also turned into the restaurants. So it was then in 2011, what happened to Gawal Mandi is that it was banned by the government because it was blocking the motorized vehicle. Mm, because a lot of, as you can see in the top left corner picture, that people are just sitting on the street on the tables and enjoying their food. So It's the dilemma of today's urban design, which we faced, I think, not just in Pakistan, but all over in the world, that our cities are only designed for the motorized vehicles. And our cities are not designed for the pedestrian or for the, it's not people friendly, it's just vehicle friendly. But at the time when Gawal was banned, on the other hand, on 2011, Fort Road Food Street was emerging on the scene, on the horizon of the eateries. So, but later on, it was the Gawal was again back on the basically restaurant culture. So now, what happened in the food street is the food street is open to the traffic in the morning, but as the sun set, the street is closed for the motorized vehicle, and it's only for the people uh, uh, who wants to enjoy food in a very cultural setting. So what they do is like they close the gates that are on the both edges of the street, and the street the owners who have street food have their chairs on the street, and people just sit there and enjoy their food in an area which is surrounded by a century old buildings, which makes an experience of dining out in a cultural settlement. And what is amazing in all this is how Lahore is resilient for its food. Like, the food is always there as a part of urban design, and we never acknowledged it as a part of urban design, and we never gave it the due importance that how it is generating, the food is generating whole urban area in that specific space. It converted the whole street. Food is basically the catalyst for converting that street from residential street into the commercial street. So how it is playing a basic parameter in the urban morphology of Lahore. So moving on from the Gawal Mandi, here we have Fort Road Food Street, which the location of Fort Road Food Street is adjacent to the Badshahi Mosque, which itself is an epitome of the Mughal architecture. So we have this majestic Badshahi Mosque, and adjacent to that Badshahi Mosque, we have uh, what we called as Shahi Mohalla, which is where brothel community was settled in the party during the partition time. But after that, they got dispersed, and again, there's a lot of history in this area. There are centuries old building, and the ground floor of these buildings were used by the food owners or the by the food hawkers, while the upper floors of the building were used by the brothel community. But later on, these brothel community got dispersed, and that street was converted into a food street during I think in 2012. So what we experience in this area is the majesticness of the Mughal architecture, which we have there in the form of Bashahi Mosque on the left side, and on the right side we have these centuries old building with the beautifully crafted jharokas on the facade of the building. And the later on, these buildings were painted in different colors, as you can see in this picture, by the government in 2000, I think 12. But now again, it was converted back to the whole beige facade in 2014. But before that, it looked like this. So there's a lot of vibrancy in that space. There's a whole aura to this space. As you can see in this top right corner picture, that there is a Shahi Gate, which is a transforming space between the Lahore fort and this street. So when you sit there and you have your food, you can experience, a very you can romanticize about the Mughal architecture. You can see in this picture on the top right corner that there is a person who is singing a flute. Then there is live singing in this space. So these all are contributing to the urban design of this specific area. In the bottom picture and in the bottom right picture, you can see that there is a basically a backdrop that was Badshahi Mosque. That is the Badshahi Mosque, making this experience of the dining out in this Lahore Fort Road Food Street a very majestic experience, a very vibrant ambiance with a very rich context. So the shop signs also here. So when the government, make the street, they tried to incorporate the urban design furniture fixtures that should be, in alignment with the Mughal architecture. As you can see in this picture, the light poles and the entrances were designed with the help of Mughal architecture. So all these, this street, which we considered as, a medium, I talked about the classifying these food areas into raw, medium, and well done. So I considered basically this as a medium space, as a medium done space, where you have, a very cultural setting and a very what we can say is majestic settings because of the Bashahi Mosque. And you sit there and you enjoy your food and you enjoy the urban design and the urban area of that space and interact with your friends and family. Then there is,
Yeah, I would
then
like to
moving
add.
on, moving
Uh,
forward, we know,
I would like to add
yes,
here that how amazing, in a, how an amazing manner that placemaking has been done here. That a place that was just a residential area or a place where people used to live has been changed. The identity has been changed by the use of food. The tourists were attracted to this place, and it was turned into a commercial area just by just by bringing food as its main core and making it a tourist site or you know um, a place that is utilized by the food people who want to enjoy food in in a natural setting that has
tourists
been
basically. Yes.
created over the years. Yeah, so that's something amazing that food is the catalyst here for the placemaking and how it has brought the people attention towards it. So yeah, that's amazing that if we want to preserve
No.
some area, we can make it the core connection, and how we can make the triangulation of the area with its culture and what people want more from that space. So yeah, the food is our main thing to go to, and we have capitalized on it, and
Yes.
that's an amazing example.
And we have these very as you know, that Badshahi Mosque and Lahore Fort comes under the UNESCO heritage site list. So it's a very important space for the tourists. When the tourists are coming in Lahore and they are visiting these spaces, so Lahore food street is becoming a very essential space where they should go, like their tour guides guide them to that you should go that space and experience that whole area from afar, because when you are in the Bashahi Mosque you are in the awe, and but when you are sitting here you are looking it from the far and you have a very different experience. So when food has become the major catalyst in converting this residential street into a food street, how amazingly it changed the urban design of of this whole area. In a residential street we don't have signages, but a simple thing, a signage, which we do not have in the residential street. But in this, when we convert the space into the into the food space, we have these food signages. That simple signage can change the whole outlook of that street, which is the major part of the urban design. And
Yeah,
how the point which I am raising here is that how food is becoming the catalyst and food is changing the urban design of the whole street and
yeah,
making it in that specific setting. It's a very essential thing. And now to visit the food street when you visit the Mosque or Lahore Fort. So
yeah,
coming out from this very, I think, cultural discussion, now we should now we should, look on the very different side of Lahore eateries, which are Chaihanas.
yeah,
Chaikhana is basically an Urdu word for a cafe or a space where people meet for a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. So Chaikhana is a recent addition on the horizon of the eateries. I think it's what we can say is 5 or 6 years that a lot of chai areas are opening up in Lahore. in the residential areas or in the commercial, like in the Johar town or in Babda town or in Iqbal town. And there are other commercial areas like in Gulberg or DHA commercial sites. We have these a lot. We have a lot of these chai khanas. So what is different in chai khanas is it's a very casual space with a very casual furniture. We don't have a very traditional setting here. So, and most importantly, it is very budget friendly. When we go to a fancy or high end restaurant or to food street or a Gawalmandi street, they are not very economical as compared to these chai khanas. Because of the lack of, I think, urban scares in Lahore, people do not have any public space where they can meet or interact with their friends or with their acquaintance or with their families. They do not basically have any space to enjoy a public life there. So what we have is restaurants where we go and where we just have food and enjoy the public life. So chai khana is why chai khana is important, because chai khana are giving us a space with a very economical, budget friendly menu where you can just have a cup of tea and you can sit there for like 2 or 3 hours and enjoy that public space. As you can see in this picture, these chai khanas have a very different aura. Like they are using very vibrant colors, as you can see on the chai clock restaurant. Then there is another restaurant on the left side where the restaurant is using the public right of way, or which we can call as in a podium for the or an entrance space of the building. They are using that, and they are just, I think it's very amazing, like how food is playing a part in people interacting with each other, and how, at every corner you can see a chai place, or you can see a restaurant, or you can see a very high and fancy restaurant, and people are just sitting there and enjoying their public life. So as you can see in this picture, there is, as I told you earlier, that it's a very budget friendly space. So the interiors are not very fancy. It's a very budget friendly, as you can see, the cane furniture, bamboo walls, in open to sky area, in which there is a string in which there are string lights, and people are enjoying their cup of coffee and just enjoying the company of a friend. Then there is another trend in chai khana restaurants. That chai khana or chai khana, or the areas for the tea, have this space, have a dedicated space, a stage for Kawali. What Kawali is? Kawali is a Sufi music where a repetition of a short sentence for in order to encapsulate a mystical surrounding. So people sit there under the starry night and with a very natural setting and very casual furniture with the Kawali going on. It's a very mystical experience or a very human experience, not a very fancy experience. And how it is changing our urban dynamics is, like in the residential areas, like we have that in Johor town and in Babda town, we have a lot of these tea places, these chai places, because people do not want to go to the high end restaurants on the daily basis because it's not budget friendly. They want to go to the they want to enjoy the public life, they want to enjoy the urban design or the urban life in this bustling city of Lahore. So we have these chai khanas, as you can see in all these pictures. You can feel the difference in the previous slide when we are discussing about the Lahore Fort Road Food Street, Gawal Mandi Food Street. Now you can see these pictures where there is a more of a casual furniture, more of a casual interiors, and not very high end or very cultural interiors. But it's a very casual, contemporary sitting areas.
So
So it's
basically, chai
comparatively
khanas.
affordable. Yes.
So basically, chai khanas are the
Yes,
modern
Asba.
dhabas.
Yes, they are in the modern dhabas, true. And they are, I think people are more comfortable to go there, because when we talk about dhaba, I think the female are not comfortable going there, the typical dhaba. But these, when we convert this dhaba into a casual, modern space, people would love to go there, as you can see in this picture. It's
Yeah,
a very vibrant interiors.
location defines the user as well, because the culture that brings people from different classes, that creates safety as well. So yeah, the high end dhabas or the modern dhabas, the chaihanas, are more attractive to the females because of its like, security purposes and everything like that. And yes, dhabas are accessible to all the people, and their cost defines the class as well. So yeah, I understand the
Yes.
point that you are raising, and that's quite interesting. And yes, chai khanas, I would like to mention that why chai khanas are being named chai khana, because chai is the very chai is a drink that people here in Pakistan loves mostly. Like they want to drink chai instead of water, and they want to drink chai with someone else, like the tea. Brings two people together. It's the conversation starter. Like food brings people together, the chai brings people to have a conversation together. So
And
this is
I
why
think
we are.
chai is for Pakistanis, chai is a remedy for everything. Chai is a remedy for chai is a remedy for heartache and for headache for both,
Yeah.
because Pakistanis love chai that much. So yes, it's understandable when we love chai so much, we have these chai khanas.
Yeah. You love chai khana, but you don't love chai.
Yes, true. So, moving on from these chai khanas, now we have these well-done modern eateries, which we have in Gulberg and in MM Alam and on MM Alam, and then in some of the areas of DH commercial areas. So, over specifically, I want to mention one area, which is Mall One. Mall One is the area on the main boulevard Gulberg, Lahore, which was basically when if we talk about the history of that area, it was a residential area in 1970s. But then after when government commercialized the Gulberg, then there then this area became as central space for different shopping, for different basically numerous brands come here and opened up, PIFD, and I think other major brands are opened were opened up in this Mall One area. But what is interesting is that at the time of when Mall One was constructed on the Gulberg, there was one or two restaurants. But after a certain time, when because of its location, a lot of people go there, and now there the whole mall is converted into a food restaurants. All the retail shops are converted into the food restaurants. If these pictures are from the Mall One. So when imagine a mall with all the retail shops converting into a food shops, and now there are no retail shops, and there's only one retail shop. I think a clothing brand named as PIFT was there, but the whole mall is converted into a food street, into a food spaces. And then along with the Mall One, there's a Mall 94 that was further established after the Mall One, when a lot of restaurants are coming in. The Mall 94 was also converted into the food space, and now this Mall One is considered as a modern food street of Lahore. We have very high end restaurants here, uh, which we can call as a well done modern eateries. So the dining out culture has also spread to the areas like Johor Town and Babda Town, but the Gulberg remains as the center of the as a center area, as a central area for the modern eateries. So these restaurants and cultures are frequently visited by families and working professionals. However, a large majority of people comprises of the young generation. Another trend which has become common is for working young professionals to dine out during their lunch break. So what was amazing for this area is that, like, food is not overcoming residential area, but it is also overcoming a commercial retail space and everything. I think there would come time in a future when everything in Lahore is about food. Every space would be about food, because right now it is. We have a food space after, I think, every 5 kilometers. We have either a chai khana, either a traditional food space, or either a very high end fancy restaurant or a street food. So, food is becoming a one major important parameter when we talk about the urban morphology or the regeneration of Lahore. So this is the panoramas of Mall One. As you can see it in the above in the above picture, there is a panorama which is showing the right side is the Mall One. The right side of the picture comprises of the Mall One, and the left side of the picture is comprises of Mall 94. And the across the road there are also uh, freestanding restaurants, not in the mall style, but there's a single standing buildings which have lot of restaurants, high end restaurants in it. Then there is an MM Alam Road. MM Alam Road is full of restaurants and the retail shops. We have a lot of international food chains like Subway, Cafe Lanto, Tuscany, Courtyard. These are all the high end restaurants where people go there. And how these restaurants are making an urban design of Gulberg and MM Alam as a very vibrant space. As I'm talking to you earlier about the signage is one thing that is a very highlighted area in the urban design of any street. So these restaurant signages are making it vibrant, and the people sitting outside, especially in the Corona times when the indoor dining was banned, and mostly the restaurants start opened up with their outdoor dining. So there's a vibrancy. Especially I remember there was a time when all the retail shops were closed down, and it's very depressing to see Lahore like this. There were no people outside, but when the government allows the restaurants to open up their outdoor dining, and finally the people was sitting outside, and when you pass through that road, you can see people sitting there in concluding sorry having a vibrancy in that area, because food is one of the major factor that is impacting the vibrancy in Lahore. So these are the major three categories when we see Lahore through the lens of food. Like there are Chaihanas, then there are very modern eateries, then there are traditional settings. Now I want to mention one last thing is food and literature. Literature is, Lahore is considered as a literature city. But also Lahore is declared as a city of literature by UNESCO in 2019. So Lahore is always being a home for writers. Before the partition time, there is a restaurant, a tea house, basically, at the Mall Road, which is called as Park Tea House. So Park Tea House is a space where a lot of writers came there and have an intellectual discussions, and over a cup of tea. Like a lot of famous writers like Faiz, Ahmed Faraz, Amrita Pritam, Sadat Hassan Manto, Ibn Insha, they all sat in this. They all was there in the Park Tea House, and they discussed the literature, and they were having a very intellectual conversations over a cup of tea. This is also a pride of Lahore, that a lot of famous writers are from Lahore, and what I'm saying here is this literature, the literature side of the Lahore is also connected to the food, that people are sitting there, people are sitting in a restaurant, the writers were sitting in the restaurants, and they were having intellectual discussions over a cup of tea. So as you can see in this picture, that the Park Tea House is an architectural style of Indo-Saracenic architecture, which is a combination of Mughal architecture and colonial architecture. So how literature in food is converted after the partition is, now it is more of a contemporary setting, like this. We have now modern cafes like Book and Beans Cafe, The Last Word. These cafes are now a place where different literary events were being held, like the storytelling events or the book launches were being held in these spaces, and there were, a library. People can sit there and read books and have a cup of coffee or have a sandwich there. So food is always here for the Lahoris. Like, if either you want to meet a friend, either you want to enjoy a public interaction, you want to sit in a public, or you want to read a book, or you want to have a very intellectual discussion, food will always be there. So uh, you know um, uh, summarizing this whole discussion, food is one of the major factor that is, impacting the urban design. Once the writer and the novelist Bepsi Sadhba jokingly said in a Lahore literary festival that if you run an eating place in Lahore, you are bound to succeed, because this is the love of Lahoriites, and this is the major uh, major element, which is for the urban regeneration of Lahore. So, concluding all this, food in the city always enriches our everyday sensations of sound, sight, and smell through how it is displayed and produced and consumed. The food signages, which I was talking about earlier, and the food cards, menu displays, and the outdoor settings becomes the urban design factors that ultimately bring out the vitality factor in the urban design of the Lahore. So the whole street, like the Fort Road Food Street or the Ghundmundi Street, where the whole streets are dedicated to the food, making it one of the driving forces in the development of the city. A city like Lahore, which is famous for its culture, has a variety of cuisines, resultantly bringing out hundreds of areas of eating spaces, contributing to the rich urban factor of the city. So I'll conclude this. I'll on this note that we should need to pay more attention towards the food element when we are designing the urban centers of the Lahore. Whenever you design a space, there is always food is always there to for the people. Uh, Food is basically a space. An element which helps the people to interact. Like as you said earlier, chai can start. Chai can be a conversation starter. Similarly, food can be an element that we can use for the urban regeneration, and we can use for the interaction of people, and we can use this element for the convivial and vibrant urban design of Lahore. So that's all from my side.
Awesome. Okay, so it was very interesting. I loved whatever you have shared, whatever you have talked about. It was amazing. And this you can stop sharing the screen.
Yes, I think I'm going to do this. Uh, Give me one second.
Okay, so it was amazing because seeing from this perspective, it was interesting because first of all, like I used to think about the consumerism culture and the capitalism culture, and I was very much upset about how people are just focusing on food and clothing, and the consumerism culture and the things that we are capitalizing on rather than the parks, the urban spaces, the open spaces, the scarce side of the city, the public side of the city. But yes, food had the importance, and it is being utilized very well. But I would despise the idea that every space will be converted into food eatery. But yeah, we have to have a balance. But I love how the government has taken the initiative of converting a place that is prone to being commercialized and utilizing it in a way that is enhancing, and that we are capitalizing on the food for the commercial side of the food street, and giving it the identity and the preservation of heritage in an amazing manner. I just love that idea. And the chai dhaba culture, yes, that's amazing too, because why not?
You are a chai lover because you're a chai lover.
Yes, I'm a chai lover and I'd love to talk with people. So it's an amazing opportunity as well. And about the MMRM, yes, that's different because people are very much investing in the architectural outcome of how the place will look. It's
Yes.
more about the architecture and ambience than it's about food. So I love that idea as well. And yes, we have to
You know that
consider everything in the balance. And I love how Lahore is being identified as food place amazingly, because people I have talked about from international experts, they want to explore the food side of Lahore, and that's amazing because it's being famous. It's being known globally, and it's definitely the best identity of Lahore. Yeah.
And I think we have a lot of food to offer,
Yeah.
actually. A lot of amalgamation of food. It's not just one kind of food. When I talked about the Kawal Mandi, I told you about the detail, like how the Sikh are,
Yeah,
the Sikh are having their harissa, the Kashmiris having their harissa. So basically, Lahore have a multicultural history, and that
yeah,
culture, the cuisine is part of that culture. And when we have so much diverse culture cuisine, we need to have diverse food spaces, and that can become a catalyst for urban design. And surely that can, attract a lot of tourists globally to Lahore.
definitely. I agree to it. Yes, with different culture and different people brought different culture and different cuisines, and that's the amazing factor why we have a why we have a diverse culture and diverse identity of Lahore. Amazing.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Aisha, for sharing your knowledge, for sharing your insight with us, for sharing your food love with us, and in a very insightful way. I love how you have seen your city and you have felt your city and how you have presented your city. Thank you so much for your time. I loved it. Take very good care of yourself. We'll talk again soon, inshallah.
Thank you so much, Asba, for having me. Okay, take care. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.